Society Sunday series here at the Russell's Mill Schoolhouse. Tonight we're going to be talking about an institution in the town of Dartmouth known as Perry's Grove. And this is a little outline of what we're going to do, but before that I want to remind you that we have an organization here that has regular meetings, and we talk about a variety of historical events. We also talk about art in the town of Dartmouth. And we have some upcoming programs. There's a program list in the back. There's also an attendance list. We request that you sign the attendance sheet. If you, and this is a little bit of an overview. I'm going to talk about where it was. Some people remember it because they either lived near it or perhaps attended it. Others remember it because they may have relatives who worked there or attended. When was it in operation? Who started it? What other families ran it? Who attended functions there? And then we're going to talk about memories and stories that we're going to share. And that's the first part. Secondly, I was lucky enough to visit Marie Bates, wife of James Bates. James Bates, whose father and mother, Curtis and Blanche, ran the Grove, or owned the Grove from 1945 to 1959. And they had acquired it from another family that we'll talk about later, that we just recently discovered. And that interview is an interview which we taped. It'll be part of our program. It will be on DCTV. And we have audio, but right now we're chasing some batteries because we may not be able to hear the audio above the noise of the background noise here. And then lastly, after that video, we're going to turn on another video with no audio, which is contemporary with when the Perry's Grove was operating in the 50s, and it's a video of the operation and showing them building the fires and layering the clams and putting in the rockweed and all that good stuff. And during that time, because it's like a silent movie, we will be talking and asking questions and doing that. So that's what's going to be happening. Next slide, please. So first we're going to talk about where was Perry's Grove and Pavilion. Next slide. I brought along a couple of maps, but I have to make sure I describe what. This map is before the Grove was started. And this right here is Slocum Road. This is when it crosses New Bedford, Dartmouth Road.
Hathaway Road.
And this is Hathaway Road right here. And the Grove later became...
It was at the corner of
right?
Hathaway and Slocum.
Right. And this is Hathaway, and this is Slocum. And Mrs. Perry, the mother of Abram Perry, in 1871 lived in that house right there. It says Mrs. Perry. Nowadays, that's owned by your family. Okay, next slide, please. That's an 1871 map. Top. This is a little later map, a little different orientation. This time, this is Slocum Road here. This is the trolley is in now, coming down State Road. Okay, this is where the country club is in these two places. This is Abram Perry lived in the house his mother used to live in, but he also had the clam bake pavilion over here. That's right over here. This is Hathaway Road, going down Smith Mills. Smith Mills is down here. Okay, next slide. Okay, when was it started? And the next slide. Fortunately, when the Bateses were having their last clam bake, they made a poster. This poster said, gives us a date, Sunday, August 30th, 1959 was the last clam bake. 1:30 p.m. After 75 years, well, if you subtract 75 from 59, you get 1884, and that's a little bit after Mr. Abram Perry stopped being a mariner. He had sailed on a whale ship, and he started his clam bake business in 1884. Okay, so it was in operation for 75 years, from 1884 to 59. And started, so next slide, please. Who was it? Who started? Well, it was a guy named Abram Perry. I have a little bit of information about Abram Perry because I was able to get it. Next slide. Abram was really, everybody called him Abram, but his real name was Abraham. It was not an uncommon way to change somebody's name in those days. And he was from a long line of Perrys. These are all his ancestors named Perry. His wife was Hannah Davis. His mother was Freelove Duvall. Kind of interesting. Russell's Mills is a place where there are a lot of Duvalls. And Freelove Duvall was his mother. His father was Samuel Perry. He was quite a lot older than his mother. And he died leaving Freelove a widow. So she was often cited in the records as Widow Perry. And his grandfather had an interesting name, Dwelly Perry. And I guess you can guess how come his first name was Dwelly. His mother's maiden name was Dwelly. Next slide, please. I won't get into all that. Genealogy is very interesting stuff, but this is about clam bakes. A little bit more about Abraham Perry. He died in 1919, or sometime around 1919, because his wife was called a widow in a record of 1919. His father and mother, Samuel Freelove, born in New Bedford. He resided in the census records of the area. He shows up in Dartmouth in 1850, 60. I didn't find him in 1870, 1880, 1900, and 1910. And he doesn't show up in 1920. So we think he died around 1919. He got married in 1872, which is when I think he built the house that your parents lived in, that was near the grove, right next to the grove. Next slide, please. A little bit more about Mr. Perry, because as the starter of this institution in Dartmouth, he had a sister, Ophelia. They owned the real estate there. It was valued at that time in 1850, which is quite a while back, $600. It was also state census 1855. His mother, with her name misspelled, was in that record. His sister was now 15, when she was 10 and 5 years earlier. Kind of rings a bell. Abraham of Dartmouth, age 23, shipped aboard the ship Amethyst on New Bedford, Mass. And he was described as having dark hair and light skin. In the 1860 census, he was still single. 25-year-old seaman, enumerated with his mother, Freelove, age 60, and she had two children, him and his sister. He also had 2 other kids living in the house. I'm not sure who they are, what they are. They might have been kids that were working on the farm or something. Then he got married in 1872 to Hannah Davis, who was 20 when he was 35. He left her a fairly young widow. Later on, this is the first marriage of both of them. And this one named E. McChesney married them. In the 1900 census, he was 65. He was called a farmer in 1900. Even though he had the clam bake, but that wasn't his major thing. Head of the house, he was married 27 years. Wife was 47 when he was 65. He had a servant working there named Walter Wilson, who was the son of Nova Scotian parents. In 1910, he's still there. I won't continue reading. In 1919, directly, Hannah Perry is shown as the widow of Abram Perry. As a widow, yeah, a widow of Abram. Okay, next slide, please. The last step is a little clear. In 29 directly, she's also still shown as a widow, and she's boarding at the home of Carrie E. Davis on Slocum Road. That's the house where your parents lived, and it's Carrie Davis's family that later on made a private written agreement with Antonio and Maria Silva, and that's Rosemary's grandparents. Rosemary is here representing some of the family here. And that was the premises on 80 Hathaway Road, Land Baker's 76, just down the street a little bit. Next slide, please. They also got 400 hens in that transaction, and some brooders and a few other, and a horse. Sometime after 1959, after Perry's owned the Grove, a family named McAvoy owned it, and eventually they sold it to the Bateses. I don't know many more of the details. If any of you have access to any more information of that type, I would appreciate to add it to the record of what we have about the Perry's Grove. And, okay, next slide, please. Now, the Bates family. The Bates family who bought it was James and Marie, and this is Marie here, who was in Guillaume. Guillaume? Do I pronounce that correctly, Marie? Your last name?
Again?
Gideon? Gideon. Okay. Alan Bates was a brother of James, and Alan is over here. Alan Bates. My friend Alan Bates worked with me at Pastor Manson Lakes and played golf with me at the Reservation Golf Club, and he's here with his daughter Lori, who helped us make all of this happen and provided some of the materials. And they have a brother. They have a brother, Curtis, who's also called Hick Bates, who lives out in California, and he sent us some of the pictures that we're going to be showing and using. Okay, next slide, please.
Did I mess it up?
No, it's not dancing now. Oh, there we go.
There we go. There we go. This is a picture of Blanche and Curtis Bates, Alan's father, Marie's father-in-law and mother-in-law. They also, of course, worked very hard at the Bates. This picture was provided by Curtis Bates from California. Okay, next slide, please. I don't know if anybody recognizes that guy,
You?
but he used to drive the tractor at Pasco Manson. He worked on the greenscaping crew, helping plant trees along State Road, some of which are still there. In the background, I'm not too sure, I think that might be looking up Hicksville over at Foss Corner Road. That might be the Jacobson House. Everybody knows Smith Mills area? Jacobson House, and not anymore, right? It's not the same way anymore. But the trees we planted along State Road are still there.
Oh, good.
And we watered those every day during one hot summer like this past summer with a tractor trailer, you know, a tractor with a tank on the back and a pump. We used to pump water on those trees. Okay, next. I keep missing. I'm not sure how Alan spells this.
It's with an A.
A.
Yeah, that's right. There.
Okay, I got it right this time. I had it wrong the first time.
It's 2 L's or 1 L?
Okay. Now, this is also a picture provided to me by Hick from California, and we can identify some of the people in the picture. One of them is the bake master, Dick Ward, and Dick's brother ran a restaurant in Smith Mills called Pop Sludge. And there's a guy who's here today. That's Alan Bates. And down here is his father Curtis, and his mother Blanche, and his brother James,
That's Kurt.
Marie's husband James.
That's Deb there.
Yeah, that's Deb, but I'm looking at, I know what Deb looked like.
But the rest of them, if anybody knows the rest of them, please raise your hand, because
Well, there's Joe Santos with the bottle in his hand.
Joe Santos, is that Joe
He
Santos?
worked for us for a long time.
Joe Santos, somebody take a note, Joe Santos.
He had an accident and I think he had to have a leg cut off or something.
He had an accident?
Yeah. Alan, do you know what happened to his leg?
Joe Santos, do you remember what happened to him? Joe Santos?
So he lost the use of his legs?
He lost a leg,
He lost
yes.
a leg, wow. We had a story here about another guy who lost his leg in a farm accident here, Mr. Elfin.
Oh,
Lost a leg in
Elfin
a-
Dairy?
Yeah,
Oh.
from that great group. So that's Joe Santos. right
Yeah.
there, okay. And how about any of these other guys? Who's this guy? He looks familiar. This isn't you, Marie, is it? That's not you?
No,
No, okay.
I was busy with the baby.
You were busy with that, okay. Which baby would that be, Brad?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I was
All
four,
right.
I was four, and I was the last one when they had the last clam bake, so
Okay.
no wonder I don't remember.
That's the sign right up there that we have a copy of, last Clam Bake. I think it might say Field Day on there, Clam Bake and Field Day, because they always made it popular for the family to have.
So this is an older picture, this is not a 1950s picture, you can tell by
I
the
have,
clothing.
I have that picture in my car.
Yeah.
I would guess
What
that
year
that's
is
an
that?
older picture than 59.
Yeah, that's like the.
Oh, yeah, probably.
That's
yeah.
what the 40s, by the hairstyle,
Yeah.
women,
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Look how young
and the
they
man on the
are.
left here has like
Oh,
a
you
straw
know
hat.
him, huh?
Straw hat, right.
Right, so that would be,
Yeah, very good.
Picture.
Good. Okay, next slide, please.
your looks like hers, and her shoes too.
Now, sometime during the time when the Clam Bake was operating, Standard Times did a piece that they put in the Saturday Roto Review. Remember the brown section? that was
Brown
big?
section.
And I got a couple of pictures of that I got from Lori. She brought some with her, I believe.
Is that Alan?
That's
And that's Alan again, right there.
Alan and who?
No.
There you are,
just
the
a
star of
word.
the show, Alan.
Still here.
Still there. And I think that is Dick Turner, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
Is that Dick Turner?
That is Dick Turner.
And I think that might be Bob Vieira right there. Some of you know Bob Vieira.
I think that's Dick Turner.
Right here's Dick Turner.
I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, but in the back there. I think that looks like Bob Vieira to me. Not sure who this is. But anyway, next slide, please. This is Blanche.
Yeah.
That's Blanche.
Putting out
The brown bread on the
brown
table.
bread. That means it's the beginning of the bake. You won't believe this, but yesterday I attended a clam boil at Horse Neck Beach. And today I attended a clam bake
Oh, boy.
in Mattapoisett. And so we started the bake with the brown bread. I'm kind of a clammy character.
Can't
Can't get enough. Can't get enough. It's really good stuff. It really is. And they still get huge crowds. Every seat was filled. And the Knights of Columbus always do very well out there in Mattapoisett. We have, well, you can look at more of these pictures from the Roto Review that have been framed by Lori Bates, Allen's daughter. Okay, next slide, please. Now, who attended the functions? I had a nice long talk with Marie, and she can add to this, I'm sure. But quite frequently, there were company outing groups such as the phone company, or the Aerovox, or other local companies. And those were not small crowds. They served thousands of people at a time at the Clam Bake. These people worked. That was a lot of hard work. And a lot of food went through that place. There were church groups. There were club groups. There were union groups. There were family groups. Wedding receptions. Bob Vieira told me he had his wedding reception here. And others. I'm not sure if I missed which ones I missed, but any I missed, Maria?
Oh, no, you're doing well.
I'm good about that. Now, one of the club groups that came had, long ago, 1905, Boston Herald had an article, Clam Bake at the end of an auto journey. Members of the Bay State Automobile Association also enjoyed the tour from Boston down the pike to North Dartmouth. And this pretty unique thing that I have a newspaper clipping from 1905. Next slide, please. It gives me much more detail than I want to give you because you get bored silly. Next slide. But it does tell us a few interesting things. Members of the Automobile Club came from Boston down to North Dartmouth, where they went to a clam bake at Perry's Grove. 16 machines. My father always called his car a machine. I'm going to take the machine somewhere.
Grandma did.
They left Boston. They were due to leave Boston in the morning, but up to 1:45, when the bake was open, only 10 had arrived. Okay? The others arrived at intervals during the afternoon and reported no mishaps on the road, though several had run from 1 to 15 miles out of the way by taking the wrong roads. You can imagine what the roads were like. Next slide, please. The route that they took was from the Hotel Lennox. I don't really know that much about where the Hotel Lennox is in Boston, but I'm sure you probably stay there. To Forest Hills, to Mattapan, I know where that is. To Brockton, I know where that is. To Taunton, to County Street in New Bedford, to Hathaway Road, to the Grove. Now, next slide. And the machines that made that route were machines or cars you hardly never hear of. The first one to arrive in 1 hour and 50 minutes was a 35 horsepower locomobile. Second one in 2 hours and 15 minutes, pretty big gap, was a 35 horsepower Columbia.
Was it Columbia? Never heard of
Columbia.
it.
Then the rest of these that also made the trip, a French machine called the Morse, 11 horsepower, a Peerless, a Pope Toledo, 2 different Wintons, another locomobile, a Packard, we've heard of that, and a Rambler, we've heard of that, but not the Rambler that they're talking about. Next slide, please. This is thanks to Wikipedia. If you ever use the computer, you can find all kinds of stuff. That's a 1905. That's probably what came down and parked on Hathaway Road to have a clam bake. That's probably how they were dressed too. Next slide, please. Kind of what you these. This is the French machine, 10 horsepower Morse.
You know, I never saw any French machines like that.
And you're French? Did they have any in Algeria? No.
Oh, yeah, they had something, but...
But not that old, right? Not that, you left Algeria long
Yeah.
before.
Oh, yeah.
This is the Peerless. Next car, please. Nice bucket seats there in the back, bucket seats. Leather. There's a Pope Toledo. There's a Winton. This is an older. This is an old one. A Winton. Look at the bicycle tire. Look at the wheels.
With the blanket over the lap and all.
Oh, yeah. Next one,
That was the
please.
heat.
That's the one we know, the Packard. Look at those nice seats. And finally, the Rambler 7 horsepower.
Oh, look
You
at
know,
that.
I think you have more horsepower in your lawnmower
Exactly.
than that. Okay, next slide, please. One of the advertisements of the day: get rid of your horse. Save the expense and care and anxiety of keeping. You know, run a motor carriage, half a cent a mile. Was gas was a little less expensive in those days. Anyway, this would cost you $1,000 at that time for the Winton. The Winton is one of the cars that makes the
That
trip.
sounds like my wife.
Okay, next slide, please.
I've seen a lot of them today.
Now we're gonna have some memories and stories. We'll have a hint of a few, but then when I talked with Marie and we recorded it, we have some more. But these are just some data entries from the contemporary 1909 Dartmouth directory. Abram D. Perry, remember Abraham Perry? He was there on Hathaway Road as a climb baker. In the 1955 directory of Dartmouth, Manning's directory, the Bates family was there, Curtis and Blanche. I guess Curtis also was a salesman. He was also president of the Massasoit Club and the Robin Hood Restaurant in Cortland. Those are the corporations that owned the pavilion, and was the chairman of the Cemetery Commission in Dartmouth. And they lived in a house at 66 Hathaway Road, North Dartmouth, that's ND. And James, his son, with his wife Marie, James apparently a clerk in New Bedford, clerk and treasurer of the Massasoit Club and the Robin Hood Restaurant. And they had their house at 70 Hathaway Road. Next slide, please. And of course, this poster is one of the things we remember grows by. Next poster, next slide, please. And in the yellow pages, if you have the yellow pages from that era, remember Wyman?
Oh,
We
yeah.
had Wyman, we had about 5 people on the exchange. We had 2 rings for you, 3 rings for me, and all that. 76 Hathaway Road. Okay, next slide. Couple of the stories that we're going to talk about now, before we go to the video. One of the more difficult stories is a story that Marie told me, and I also heard about from Rosemary, who was a friend of Marie's son Bradford. Bradford was, when they finally get rid of all the patrons and start cleaning up after the bake, among other things, they would burn a lot of the trash in a burn area. And it was a regular habit to, in the morning, Mr. Bates, Curtis Bates, would mow the grass. And he'd always have a can of gasoline to refuel his lawnmower. And that would be locally available, so when he was mowing the grass. And after the bake was over, it was still there. And Bradford and his little brother Bruce were out near the fire. And I guess Bruce was getting a little too close to it. And Brad was a little older, was going to protect his brother, I think. And so he was going to put out the fire, and he grabbed a can that he thought was water, but it wasn't water. And he threw it on the fire. And when he did, there was a big explosion. Marie was working somewhere cleaning things up, and she heard it. And she came running, and the little boy was on fire. And a man, she jumped on the little boy to try to put out the fire. And one of the patrons who was still there from the telephone company outing, he also jumped on and succeeded in putting out the fire. Then Marie's husband, James, came, got his car, they put the boy in the car and took off for St. Luke's, where he was taken care of. But Marie described him very vividly as being very badly burned from here down, but not his face. He put his hands up like this.
Yeah.
Rosemary says, who was his
His
contemporary.
arms.
Yeah.
Yeah, his arms were
His
burned.
chest,
Chest.
he had like cinders, like deeper spots,
Yeah.
and that, nothing on his face, his
But he
chest.
later played golf, as I recall.
Yeah, and his
I
head.
played golf with my brother in
Oh, yeah.
high school
He
golf
wasn't
team.
handicapped from
Thank
it.
you
No,
very much.
no, not at all.
He
And
only missed a short amount of school.
Yeah.
He has big stars there.
Yeah, but he's not handicapped from it, Mom. There's a visual, more of a visual handicap.
thanks to Marie and the man from the telephone company, whose name we never got, right?
I had no idea who he was.
But he was a great, did a great deed at a great time when we needed it. Another story that I got from Marie was that, of course, people would bring beer and wine and whatever for their own satisfaction to go along with the clams and the food. But sometimes, some people have too much, like they do everywhere. And one poor guy had an upset stomach as a result of all the food and all the beer. And he had false teeth. But the false teeth weren't permanently adhered to his mouth. And they disappeared down the toilet. And all hell broke loose when he lost his teeth. And eventually they had to dig up the cesspool. And they retrieved the teeth cost a lot of money even in those days. So he got his teeth back.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of work. I'm not sure how you're going to pay for all that work. And he found his teeth.
Wait, 3 days and we all set.
Anyway, that's a story that you can't forget. Now, I heard another story from neighbors of the pavilion. Some of those people who would get too much to drink would get sleepy. And according to one of the neighbors, who had a nice garden, people now and then would be found asleep between the rows of corn in the garden. They have to wake them up and say, out of here. Now and then the neighbors would all, I guess, when you get a crowd of 1,000 people at a clam bake, you can't have enough toilets. You gotta go, you gotta go. Some of the people were knocking on the neighbor's door and said, can I use your bathroom?
Was that good?
I do remember that.
That was told by your aunt, I think. Anyway, I went to school with Rosemary's Aunt Peggy, who was in my class, high school class of '53. And Rosemary and some of her cousins worked in the little stand that's right at the foot of the 12th hole in the Country Club of New Bedford when we were talking about golf here a few weeks ago. They used to sell hot dogs and hamburgers and stuff, and every golfer who ever played golf at the Country Club remembers the food and the girls that served the food.
Especially the girls.
And her husband is a relative of Armand Photo, who ran the variety store and the post office at Smith Mills. So,
As a fire department.
and was the chief of the fire department, drove the fire engine. When the siren rang, Armand took off his apron and got in his Cadillac and went down, jumped in on the fire engine, drove around. And we have lots and lots of memories of Smith Mills. And we've shared some of, and we'll have another Smith Mills time again. So, next slide, please. Great. The next section of this is going to be the video. We're over on Anderson Way at the home of Marie Bates, who is a daughter-in-law of Curtis Bates, Curtis and Blanche, who used to operate Perry's Grove. And Marie has a lot of good memories and a lot of accurate memories about those days in Dartmouth and what a big operation we had at Perry's Grove. And she knows some of its history as well, and has got an interesting history of her own life to tell us about as we get started. I'm going to begin by asking Marie to introduce herself and tell us about how she got to Dartmouth.
I am Marie Bates, the wife of James A. Bates, who was born in Dartmouth all of his life. I was born in Algeria and met him during the war. I am of French descent and Spanish descent. I was the first French war bride to hit the greater New Bedford area, so said the Standard Times. And some people said I wouldn't make it.
But you did.
Well, it's been a long time. And I guess I learned fast because I learned the clam bake business, and I was in charge of it from there on.
Hey, Marie, I'm going to begin by asking you a couple of questions
Sure.
to help us all get a background about the clam bake business at Perry's Grove. Tell us a little bit about what you know about how it all began.
It's kind of hard because it began a long time before the Perrys did.
I believe it began in the 1880s, 1870s even.
Yeah.
Yes.
I only know from the time the other people, oh, what is the name? I forgot. It'll come to me. Who decided to sell, and my father-in-law wanted to get, being the end of the war, he wanted to get something for his sons, so his sons could find some place to work, make a living, or whatever. James was the oldest one. Alan was still in the Navy, and they had another son named Curtis.
Curtis.
He's in California.
I've talked with Curtis. Yes.
You have?
Yes, I have.
Oh, good. We lived for 2 years with the seniors because it was very hard to find a place to live in those days. And then out of one of the old buildings on the site of Perry's Grove, there used to be an old barn. My husband and father-in-law decided to make a house. So they made a duplex where Jim and I lived on one side and Alan lived on the other side because he had gotten married since then.
This was just south of the Grove? On Hathaway Road?
To the front left.
front left, yeah, south. Yep. South and east, like.
And the house is there now. It's a big house.
Yes,
It's a
yes.
white house, you
Yes,
know.
yeah. Tell us a little bit about the land there. How big a place was it?
Oh, the land, it had way over 6 acres of land.
It's over 6 acres.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yep.
See, it went way back.
And they had a ball field there, correct?
They tried to, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We tried to do, at least my father-in-law did, tried to make it like a place for families
Yes.
to have ball field, basketball, a little bit of everything.
Horseshoes, maybe?
Yeah, oh
Horseshoes,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
They were great for horseshoes.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And he had the place up till
59. According to, there's a poster that
47.
they put up, said
59,
last chance.
yes.
We want to probably show that on camera eventually.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But Jim and I, who lived in that house,
Yeah.
had it up to here.
Yeah. Enough. Yeah, yeah.
We didn't have any time to ourselves. During the week, people would bring in the stuff like the potatoes, the beer, the stuff like that, and I had to keep on going back and forth. And I had a baby, you know, it was
Yeah.
kind of hard.
Yeah.
So Jim was working in Boston,
Yes.
and it was a long ride for him.
Yeah.
So he said, let's try to get closer to my work. And we did.
Yep.
And we moved to Randolph,
Yep.
at which time my father-in-law said, well, we came back for a whole year to work, but
Yeah.
after that we couldn't do it anymore.
Okay, tell me a little bit about the weekly cycle
The weekly
for
cycle.
the bakes.
Okay.
The bakes are usually weekends, I would imagine.
Well, depending on the people, sometimes we had a large clam bake, like for the Aerovox, where there were over 1,000 people.
Wow.
And sometimes we had some for just about 50 people. Those usually were on a Wednesday or some day during the week. But the big ones were on weekends. And when they were on weekends, you worked hard.
Oh, yeah. How late in the week would the clams show up? Because I know the clams were an important part of the bake,
Oh, the clams always came the day.
the day of the bake. So there's a lot of work to get those clams ready to go into the,
Well, they had to be washed.
yeah.
The thing is, we could get everything else ready ahead of time the day before, such as the potatoes, the onions, and whatnot. But the day of the clam bake, that's real early in the morning, we would get the fresh clams.
Yeah.
And we would have somebody take care of making the chowder.
Okay.
We had another man, whenever they requested it, to make clam cakes.
Well, you can tell me about the menu. What did people eat at
The
your
menu,
clam bake?
first it was a chowder.
Chowder, yeah.
Then they had clams.
Yeah.
They had plates of clams.
Plates and clams.
And usually people had as much as they wanted.
Yeah.
And with the clams came sausages, fish,
Potatoes.
sausages, fish.
Sweet, was there any sweet corn or potatoes?
Oh, sweet potatoes, regular potatoes. Thank you. Oh.
I love clam bakes. I go to them all the time.
I had never had a clam
Oh,
in my life.
Okay.
It's funny because we had some friends coming to see us from Milwaukee. And I served them and said, come on, let's eat. And they grabbed a fork and knife and trying to cut the clams. No, 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 no.
Terrific. Now, I understand that a lot of boys, when I was a boy,
Yes.
Bob Vieira, David Constantine,
Yes.
they
They work for
Gabe
that.
DeTata,
Yeah.
Eddie Turner,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Bob Turner.
They work for me.
Yeah, I thought so. A lot
Yeah.
of teenage boys.
Yes.
Get
High
work.
school. High
Yeah.
school.
Did Terry McCormick ever work for you?
No, not Terry.
He's too young, I think. They would be older guys.
I knew them
How about the Sissons?
because we used to.
The Grahams, the Sissons?
No, the Sissons didn't work there
Jenkins?
either. No,
No? Okay.
No.
Okay.
no.
The Turners, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were very close friends of the Bateses.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah. They were very friend. Well, they went to school with Hick,
Yeah.
with Curtis. I mean,
Yeah, right.
call him Hick.
Right. Now, these people had their picture taken, and Curtis Hick sent me a copy, and I can identify a few of those people, but not very many. Do you remember the names of any of those people?
This one is my father-in-law.
Okay, so that's Curtis Bates, Sr.
This one is my mother-in-law.
That's Blanche Bates. Okay. Those two
I don't know these people here.
Okay. Mr. Ward,
Oh.
one of them is Mr. Ward. I know,
Yes. And this one, oh, this is Alan Bates.
yeah. Alan Bates, yep,
Yeah.
I know that one. Of course.
Some of these people work at the clam bakes once or twice.
Yeah,
That's it. They work when Dick Ward was there, but then after that, they don't.
yeah. So is this Dick?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dick's brother ran a restaurant down in
Yes.
Smith Mills.
Yes.
Pop's Lunch,
Yeah.
which was a
Yeah.
very well-known
Yeah.
restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember going there. They had a post office in there, too.
Right, right. Now, occasionally I've seen advertisements that say that you serve chicken barbecue also.
Oh,
Was that very common?
no.
No, just
No.
on occasion.
But we found out from somebody in one of the Fairhaven churches who used to broil those chickens. And we kind of liked it, and we set up something like that. But then, from there on, if anybody wanted it, we would see to it that they would get it, but otherwise.
Do you remember what was charged for a seat at the clam bake? There's a charge of $59.
I think at the beginning it was about $225,
Yeah, it's $250
$250
at the
there.
last one. The last one was $250.
Yeah.
You know what that costs now?
Yes.
$40.
Yes. Yeah, that's quite a bit more. But then we didn't have too many places where they had clam bakes.
Right.
They had one down. What do they call that place?
Fort Phoenix,
No,
no.
yeah, that was Brown's,
Francis Farms.
Francis Farms.
in
That's the
Rehoboth.
one.
Yeah.
And we went there, and we were very surprised to see how they were doing it. They were putting the wood in a pit
Yeah.
and throw gasoline into it to get the fire going.
Gasoline. That takes.
Gasoline or kerosene.
Yeah.
We were very disappointed when we saw that. We were the only ones to have the real
Yeah.
old-fashioned clam bakes.
Did you use seaweed, Marie?
Beg pardon?
Did you use seaweed to cover the big or
Oh, yes.
canvas? Or,
Now, this was almost a whole week job for just one clam bake.
yeah.
Jim had an old car, and he used to go get stones. Now, they had to be the right kind of stones
Yep.
that would get warm but not break.
Yep.
And he would get the car full for each clam bake, put them there. Then we had to get some wood, not just any kind of wood, not a slab, You need something that would hold the fire, the heat.
Yep.
That we would order, and they would deliver potatoes. They would deliver onions, like I said before, and the clams was the last time. Sometimes we used to get the quahogs the night before.
Oh, you'd have quahogs also.
A chowder
Oh, chowder.
is not made
Yeah,
with
yeah.
clams.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
A chowder
For
is
the
made
chowder.
with
all right.
quahogs.
Yeah, for the chowder. Okay.
We had to brush them real good, get all the sand out.
Grind them up.
Wash them first.
Yeah, wash them first. Yeah.
We would grind them the next morning before the. Half of the quahogs, the ground up quahogs, would go in the chowder.
Yeah.
The other half would go in the
The dressing. We should
the
make-
dressing.
Yeah.
It was good dressing.
Oh, yeah. Everybody loves the dressing. Did you serve brown bread also?
Oh yes,
Oh, yeah. That's the other item. We forgot that.
brown bread and corn
Clam bakes.
and
Yeah.
corn.
Yeah, yeah. And
And-
beer, right? Beer for drink.
Well, we didn't finish the beer. The
Oh, no,
people
they
bought
bring
their
it.
own beer.
No, okay.
No, we didn't.
Because you didn't have a license, right? Yeah. Yeah. Because of those silvers.
We tr-
Yeah.
yeah.
That's too
That
bad.
place could have been a real nice place.
Yeah.
Good for the people around here, which
Yeah,
young couples had no place to go.
yeah, that's right. That spot in Dartmouth
Yeah.
is a very special spot because that's where the first town hall was in the town of Dartmouth in the 1600s. The
I
town
didn't
hall.
know that.
Yep, I did. See, so I brought some information for you too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the first town hall was. Yep.
No kidding.
They even had stocks. If somebody misbehaved, they put them in the stocks
Yeah.
in those old days.
Yeah.
They had an animal pound there also.
Oh,
Put in stray animals and stuff.
no kidding.
Yeah, that's been a special spot for a long time.
Well, when my father-in-law bought it, he did a lot of work to it. He had the big building in front there all closed in.
Yeah.
And the kitchen fixed up and
Did
all
he get
that.
any business from the country club, from the golfers? Did
No.
he sell any drinks or anything? No. Okay.
No.
There's a stand there now on the other side of the
On
street.
the other side, that's, yeah,
Yeah, and the girls worked in that.
That's-
the Silver girls. Worked in
yeah.
that. Yeah.
one of the silver girls.
Yes. Yeah. I have a story to share with you.
Sure.
When I first married, I married a woman named Lemus
Yes.
from Rockdale Avenue area.
Yes.
Yes, and her mother was a Grew, Grew, last name, and her mother was a Danish immigrant who, as a girl, worked at the clam bake.
What was
Sure.
her name?
Her name was Bankskor, Jensina Bank, not for you. She
Oh,
worked there
before.
in 1910 or something
Oh,
like that.
yeah.
So, and apparently a lot of local people worked there serving tables and
Uh-huh.
working at the clam bake. They were neighbors, basically, walked down the street. And I've heard stories from her because she was a nice little old lady when I married her granddaughter. And I used to sit and talk with her about how things were when she was a little young girl.
Yeah.
And she grew up in a house. She brought up a family. She grew up in Denmark, but she married David Grew, and the Grews were all from the area along Hathaway Road, all the way down to Shawmut Avenue. And Derek's grandfather is connected with that family.
No kidding.
And Mrs. Grew, Jensina, her name is. I named a daughter after her.
Yeah.
Jensine is the name. Jensine.
Yeah.
She lived right near where the golf course later, Whaling City Golf Course, on the house that's right there on the golf course.
Oh.
She brought up her family there.
Yeah.
But her in-laws, the Grews, lived down closer to Shawmut Avenue
Yeah.
on Hathaway Road. So there's a lot of family
Oh yes.
around
A lot of people.
these areas.
There was a Miss Little.
Yes.
Do you remember Miss Little?
No, I don't.
She was an old maid,
Yeah.
and she worked for us.
Yep.
So I had her put in charge of the clam bake, of the chowder,
Yeah.
to make sure she had the things ready on time and all that. She was pretty old too. She finally had to give up.
Did you know any of the Sequeira family? No, they were along Rockdale Avenue also, Rockdale
Sequeira?
Hathaway Road area.
I've heard that name, but I
The
don't.
Lemuses? Any of those?
Lemuses,
Yes,
yes.
yeah, a lot of Lemuses up there.
Yeah.
And Perry's, Portuguese Perry's.
Yes. Yes.
Now, Mr. Perry, Abraham Perry,
yes.
is the guy who started the clam bake.
Yes.
And his mother's name was Freelove Perry. She was a Duval,
Ah.
and she came from Westport.
Yeah.
And she married a man quite a bit older than her, whose name was I'm blocking the first name, but Abraham's father.
Yeah.
And he was like 15 or 20 years older than his wife, and he died
Oh.
long before she did. And she was a widow living in the house just across the street from the Grove on the corner of Slocum Road and Hathaway Road,
That's where
where the Silvers.
the Silver daughter lives.
Yes, yes. So that's where Freelove Perry lived as a widow in
Yeah.
1890.
Yeah.
Now, he built the house where Tony Silva lived, Mr. Sylvia.
Mr. Silver there. Yeah.
That house he built in like 1884 when he got married.
Yeah.
He married a Davis girl, Hannah Davis, and she survived him.
Yeah.
Also, Abraham died before his bride,
Yeah.
and she sold the house that they had lived in to her brother, and eventually her brother sold it to Mr. Sylvia, and he sold it to him with 400 hens and a whole bunch of other equipment,
Yeah. Yeah.
a horse and so forth, stuff like that. But it's a lot of history there.
I guess it is. Yes.
I'm
yes.
wondering if you have any stories, any things that you remember as special things that happened during the years of the clam bakes.
Where was the location? The
The-
exact location.
Yeah, the exact location. Why don't you tell us about how would I get there if I were driving?
Now?
Yeah,
Well, you know where Slocum Road is.
I do.
To the end of Slocum Road, you come to Hathaway Road,
Right,
and that land in front of you
Just on
is
the
Sperry's Grove.
right. It's right to the left. You come at the end of. It's across from the golf course. They use it as a parking lot now.
Oh, for that little church or?
Oh, it's above. It's south of the church. There's a house in between.
Okay.
End of Slocum Road, there's a house.
Yeah.
It's to the left of the house, and toward the back is the Perry's Grove land. And the house where they lived is just on the
It's
border.
the big white
Big white
house.
house. Yeah.
And it's all fenced in now.
Now, I have a couple of stories that I've heard
Yeah.
over the years.
What were the years of the clam bake about?
The clam bake was running until 1959, and they started it right after the war.
It was weekly?
It was like a weekly thing. Once in a while, there would be one during the week.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but-
Anytime anybody wanted a clam bake, they would.
Oh, like you get so many people to want one. And to do
Right,
it for you.
yeah. It would be like a party for Aerovox or Cushionet Company or
Yeah, telephone company. No, no, no.
VFW or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
a lot of union. They had union parties too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So different days of the
And they had a good time. They were here all day. They had games and all, and they had booze. But we didn't handle the booze.
BYO.
They had that 1 day license.
Okay.
We had nothing to do with it.
One of the stories I've heard is that once in a while, one of the customers would have a little bit too much booze, and they'd fall asleep in the garden next door. And they'd have to wake them up and things. And now and then they'd be knocking on the door saying, "Can we use your toilet?" Have you heard any of those kind of stories?
Not that one,
Not
about
that
the,
one, yeah.
but there's one when a guy from the telephone company had too much booze, and he lost his teeth.
He lost his teeth in the fire, or just lost them.
No, he lost them in this.
Fell on them?
They went down. My father-in-law went and dug up the cesspool
Oh, they went down the toilet. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, Falsey.
He
I thought you meant
puked them out.
But he got them. He got them.
He didn't put him back in his mouth after that.
He washed them. Then he washed them.
You know, they're pretty expensive,
He washed
so.
him then in the car.
One of the stories we need to hear again, I heard it before we started, is Bradford had an accident.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us that whole scenario?
Yeah.
Bradford was born
Brad
in
was-
1947. He's
Yeah.
the same age as my brother Elton.
Yeah.
Played golf on the same
Yeah,
golf team.
yeah,
as
yeah,
my brother
yeah,
Elton.
yeah. Brad was 8 years old at the time. My father-in-law used to be an early riser, and each time we had a clam bake, he made sure he got up real early so he could cut the grass so it'd be nice and he used a gasoline tank to put water in so he could pour the water into the lawnmower.
Yeah.
And he was so busy that he left it to the side of my house. I had the little fence there.
Yeah.
And after the clam bake was over, I called my kids to come in and eat. And Brad went to Bruce, to my son Bruce.
Yeah.
Bruce was 3 years younger, who was poking at the fire.
Yeah.
We had a fire there to burn all the papers and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So Bruce wouldn't listen. And Brad saw that can of water, and he grabbed it and he threw it in the fire.
It wasn't water.
All of a sudden I hear a scream and a ball of fire running. That was my son. I was there and I ran until I caught him. Then that other man came
From
on
the
top.
telephone company.
Yeah.
Is he a patron? This is during a time of a bake? Or
Well, at the end of the bake.
End of
It
the
was
bake.
at the end of
End
the
of the
bake.
bake, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And Jim had been playing. It's funny because Jim had been sick all summer, and he had been playing golf that day. He came in as quick, get in the car. Got in the car, we flew to the hospital, and the rest, well, he was in the hospital back and forth every other week, you know.
so he was pretty badly
For a lo-
burned.
oh, yeah. He was not his face, just from here
Yeah.
down. He was burned. His hands, everything was wrapped up. He looked like two ducks. His feet, his whole body, and it was very, very hot that summer. And he wanted to scratch, and he could. I used to take a knitting needle and put it through between the bandages to try
Scratch the
to
itch. Yep.
scratch him a little bit.
This is your son.
Yes, Bradford's son. Yeah, our oldest
Yeah,
son.
my oldest son.
How many kids total?
4, 2 boys and 2 girls. Yeah,
Oh, what a story. I want to share one other story.
yeah.
This is a newspaper headline from 1905, and it tells about an automobile club
Yeah, I can see
that
that.
got together and drove down from Boston
Yeah,
to have a clam bake at Perry's Grove in 1905. And there's a big article that goes with this.
Famous or
you got that from the Standard Times?
No, this is from the Boston Herald.
Oh, from the Boston? Oh,
And there's a list of all the different cars that came, and none of those cars exist anymore as brands of cars. There's locomobiles
yeah,
and
yeah.
all
yeah,
kinds of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And I have the article that I'll share on Sunday night.
Yeah, yeah,
some of
yeah,
that
yeah,
article.
yeah.
But it's been wonderful talking with you.
Well, I
And
wish I could have been more helpful,
No,
but
you're very helpful.
they had put a cement block, that big cement block, there,
Okay.
where they would have the fire.
So they make like a pit, like
Well, it was
surrounding.
not a pit, it
It was
was
above
just
ground, yeah.
above that.
Yeah.
That place on, the other place you mentioned, the Clambake.
Allen's Neck,
No, the other one.
Fort Phoenix.
No,
Smith,
whatever. There, we noticed that they used to dig.
Francis
do it
Farms. Francis Farms.
right in the dirt,
Yeah.
and then they would put out
Alcohol, kerosene or something.
kerosene.
Yeah, terrible.
Yeah, yeah.
But how did you do yours then? So how was the preparation for the food?
Oh, the food. Okay. First of all, the day before, we counted and washed all the potatoes and sweet potatoes, one for each person plus, and an onion for each person also. There was lots of crying. We had an old man who used to live around here, right next to us, Mr. Pratt. He used to do the onions for us.
Yep.
He never cried. So, all those things were ready. So the next day, the day of the clam bake, we put so much, we had one of those big wots there. Put so much water in there. And potatoes. Potatoes which had been cubed, by the way.
Yeah.
And then we put the quahog water. Because if you put the quahog water first, the potatoes will not cook.
Yeah.
So you boil the potatoes first, then you add the other water.
They're
And-
making, this is the chowder they're making.
Yeah, the chowder. And the ground up quahogs you put in there.
Some onions.
Put some milk and the onions, of course, also. We would serve the chowder, and when we were through, Jim would take the canvas off the fire because they were covered with canvases. And there we had trays, big trays, but the trays were what do you call it?
Chicken wire?
Like chicken wire.
Chicken wire. Yep.
Okay. And you had all the fish, one or two trays, or depending on all the sausages, all the
Sweet corn
the corn. The corn didn't go like that. The corn went in a bag.
in a bag.
We had them white bags.
Okay.
Put them in there.
Right, so everything else was mixed in one big batch.
Oh, the clams went first though, before
Closest
anything
to the
else.
fire.
And the
In the
steam
ground?
Yeah.
from the steam from the clams would cook the other stuff.
So you get the flavor.
How far down in the ground?
There was not below ground. They built.
No, not below ground,
They bought cement block
Above.
wall.
Yeah.
above
So
ground.
they made an above ground container,
Yes,
and they
so it'd be
built
nice
a fire
and
in
clean.
that.
Everything was nice
That's
and
what I was
clean.
wondering.
My poor husband would lose 10 pounds in a week. Because he used to be in charge of the fire. I was in charge of everything else.
Now, how about the brown bread? How would that be baked?
Oh, the brown bread, well, you bought it.
You
We bought it.
Okay.
And all we did was slice it and put it on the tables.
Okay.
So it was clams on the bottom and then all the other food mixed?
No, each layer.
So
There
each
was
had their
layers of layers.
Different
Their own
layers.
trays and their own
Yeah.
chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'd stack them up.
Yeah.
It's just
You know,
wire,
there were
so
wire in
Yeah.
between, so the steam would go right up on right up.
And
through.
once in a while, some of them wanted lobsters. So we would get lobsters. It would be too expensive to have a whole lobster. So they said, well, we'll take a half a lobster. So you could see Marie with a cleaver. I never thought I
this-
would do that.
This Marie, right?
This Marie. No, the other Marie never did anything. She never came to
It
help.
didn't work. No.
And the only thing Alan did was wait on tables with his mother on one of the tables.
And who brought you the clams? Different people?
Huh?
You always get the clams from the same place? different fishermen? Or?
No, no. We tried to get them. There was a place up the north end. I forgot the name. And then there is a place down the south end also, you know.
A fish market, basically.
Yeah. The big guy,
Yeah.
big guy there. What was it?
Yeah.
No, and we always got good clams. Sometimes they had to bring the clams from Maine,
Yeah, when there's a shortage of clams, you have to go away to get them.
and sometimes they would get them from the south, from.
Chesapeake, probably. How many bushels of clams would you have in a weekend?
Oh, it all depends on the people.
Okay.
What
What would be typical?
one bushel for 20 people,
Okay.
approximately.
Yeah.
And sometimes we had so many bushels of clam that all you could do is smell clams.
You really stack them up. You had more than one layer of clams, right?
Well, no, it was just the clams all went together. That was
All-
the last thing. You
Yeah.
know.
Okay.
They all went together, and they cooked pretty good.
Yeah.
And Jim always made good that they were cooked.
Oh yeah. You don't want raw clams. No. They cook pretty quick though. Good fire.
Yeah, but you have the other stuff to cook.
That's
also,
right.
You know,
Right.
the sausages, the fish.
Yeah.
Did you have linguiça back then?
The what?
Linguiça and chorizo back then? Or
No.
Just regular sausage?
No,
Hot dogs?
Just American sausage,
Yeah.
regular
Regular
sausage.
just sausage.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was enough.
Yeah, you don't need more than
These days, you always get linguiça
Yeah,
or something
right, yeah.
around here.
Yeah,
I like the
Small
onions,
difference.
so the onions come on nice.
I like a linguiça sandwich.
Oh yeah.
That's good.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
One of the girls who comes and takes care of me, she brought me a linguiça sandwich the other day. It tasted very good.
Is there anything you would like us to make sure we explain to everybody? Because we'll probably have 30 or 40 people there, we hope. And I would like to share with them the important-
People, well, the thing is, we were not serving individual people. They were only groups.
groups, right? Okay, so it's a party
Yeah,
for parties
yeah,
that come.
yeah.
And they'd make arrangements ahead of time.
Oh, yeah.
Would they pay ahead of time or pay individually?
No, they pay at the end.
They pay at
Whomever
the end,
was in charge.
would dish it up.
Yeah.
Did they give tips?
Yeah, sometimes they did.
Yeah, good.
Sometimes they did.
Because all those kids work pretty hard, right?
Oh, yeah.
Especially this kid here.
They liked it. They
Yeah,
liked it.
yeah.
I love those kids. They were good.
Yeah.
And at that time, if any of us needed help, like we for Parish Grove, somebody else for Lincoln Park and all that,
Yeah.
we would, or the hotel, we would switch. They would call, hey, I need so many waiters.
Yeah,
And I'll send them some of mine, or they would send me some of theirs.
excellent.
We would work together.
Yeah,
It was fun. And one of the clam bakes I worked for them over there was the Democrats.
oh, the political
And
party. yeah.
Kennedy was there with his wife. And they came around to shake hands. And she came in front of me and turned my back to her.
That's Jackie?
Jackie, yeah. I was a good Republican then.
Okay,
Now I'm not proud to be Republican.
okay. I think there are a lot of Republicans who feel the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could have accepted that guy as a Republican.
I don't know. I won't comment because we're on tape.
It's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
You're allowed.
I'm allowed, okay. Well, thank you very much, Marie.
Well, if I could think of something else, I could let you know.
Well, if you can make it, let me know and I'll get a ride for you on Sunday. I'll get you a ride.
Okay, I will.
Okay, all right. Maybe Lori will give you a ride because Lori's coming,
Oh,
and Alan.
oh.
Alan's memory's not too good, you
I
know.
Do you know that Jim was like that for 2 years?
Oh, I do. I remember he played golf like that a few times. Yeah.
He said he got a birdie every shot.
He was a
Hey,
good golfer. He was a good golfer. He was on.
He had a hole-in-one on his birthday, 82nd birthday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Something to shoot for.
We were the Kleinbeck cheer. When he came in, he said,
Okay, well, thank you very much.
well, that was
I
my
really
pleasure.
appreciate it. It's my
I must
pleasure.
have known you when you were younger.
You most likely did. Most likely did. Yep, I've been around here forever.
Well, since 1944.
You must
I've been
remember
here.
the photos. You remember the photos?
Of course.
Bob Vieira. Do you remember Bob Vieira?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Bob Vieira had a wedding reception at the pavilion.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think maybe a clam bake. I'm not sure if he had clams.
I don't remember that.
But he told me he's got pictures
Mm-hmm.
from his wedding, and he was one of the kids that worked there.
Yeah.
He's a good guy.
A lot of the New Bedford high school kids came.
Yeah.
Is it still worth taking a shot of where it was? Or not really? Can't tell.
There's nothing to see. It's just parking lot.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of cars parked there. They had a fire after Country Club bought it from the Bateses, and they stored equipment there. And there's an article, I have an article about a fire that broke out. Some of their equipment burned up, a tractor and a few other things.
Yeah.
But it's on this side of Halfway Road.
Yeah, it's across from the 13th
Done.
tee.
It's done.
You know where the 13th tee
The
is?
one coming, what, after you
13th.
cross the road?
Yeah, the first one after you cross the road.
That's 7, right, going that way?
7th going that way, 12th comes back.
Oh, and 13th.
12th green is right there
Oh, and then
before you,
cross again, I
then,
got you, 13th.
then on the 13th
After,
tee.
after the big white house
Maybe I'll go just
with
get
the
a
fence,
pan shot of the
Yeah,
area.
sure. That's
with the
good.
fence,
Yeah.
there's an empty space.
After the what house, what color?
The big white house. That was our first house. That was
To-
made.
To the left of the White House or the right?
They're to the right.
To the left.
No.
No, to the right. To the right. And you're facing the Grove. Your house was on the left.
The house. Well,
Yeah.
it was my mother-in-law's house and then my
So it's
house.
the area to the right of the White House.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a house
then-
at the end of Slocum Road.
Yeah.
And then there was a Sylvia's.
Then you can see where they park cars. You'll see where they park the
I'll
cars.
give a
Yeah.
shot, a wide shot.
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
It was fun in one way. I missed it, but I had to do it. We had to do it.
Yeah. Became a chore after a while. I'm
It
sure.
was. Jim would become so thin every summer. Oh,
Sometime you'll have to tell us about your childhood in Algeria.
oh my
That
child.
might be another time. Right?
That was a long time ago.
Oh yeah. We hear about the French Foreign Legion
Yeah,
in Algeria.
yeah.
That must have some connection to some of your ancestors. Right?
Well, my father was in the service too.
Yeah.
When he was young, he was in the cavalry.
Yeah.
He had one of those big capes, red capes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Just like the French Foreign Legion.
Yeah, and Algeria was nice